Moses prepared me for this show. I interviewed him about 2 weeks, a week before the show, and so I knew what to expect, and yet I was still shocked and uncomfortable sitting in my seat, and I say that in a good way. I think everyone should be shocked and uncomfortable. As Black men and women in this cast, can you share with me a little bit of the journey you've gone on with this show? Because this is a big show, an important story to tell. So what's that emotional journey been like, discovering these characters, telling the story?
It's been rough. Before, I'm from Chicago, and when I didn't think I would I would get it, and when I got it, I was actually kind of shocked. And to realize I would be playing the aggressors in the show, it was a heavy pill to swallow. It took me some time to even want to look at the script, to see what I had to do. I kept putting it off because I didn't want to go there. Even in rehearsals, when we were doing fight call, just physically my body didn't want to do certain things. It was a struggle between the artist saying, do this, and my body saying, I can't do this. So it's been a constant struggle, an internal struggle, going back to when Moses asked us if we wanted to do the thing that we do in the show. I don't know if we're going to give it away. And we had to come to a cast agreement. There's also the struggle of being the grandson of Bessie Mae Stanley and the artist. There's always that constant struggle that I'm having inside to do this show and to go those places. And I have to hang it up once I leave the stage because of what it takes for me to do. I'm an artist that tries to give myself and submit to the piece. I can't entirely do that for my own sanity with this show.
Yeah, but there's also sort of like there was two rehearsal processes, I guess I would say. There's the rehearsal process of learning the steps, learning where I stand, learning all my notes. But then there was also this separate process that had to happen sort of at the same time to emotionally and psychologically and mentally prepare myself to subject myself as a person of color in this day and age to what happens in this show, to having to play some of those aggressors and having to even embodying the Jewish stereotype that is Leibowitz was a challenge for me. I have a friend from New York who is those stereotypes, but he isn't because it's just who he is, and I've met his family, and it's who his family is. So I had to physically alter my body to be able to sort of understand that there's a bigger picture than myself that is happening on this stage every night, and getting myself ramped up to be able to submit myself, or not even submit myself, but allow the work to pass through the vessel, was a whole separate process that took up until opening night and up until every single day that I step on this stage, which I think is sort of why you had that feeling of the show's grown so much, is because every time that I get to come into this theater every day, I get to come at it with a stronger understanding of the importance of what is happening every day here and the power that I have to create change as a performer in this show.
To piggyback on that, it's every day that we perform, we're in the show that much further. You know, we're doing the steps that much cleaner, we're that much more precise, we're thinking ahead and in the moment, you know. In rehearsal process, it's a little hard to kind of play because we're still learning and there's all other sorts of stuff that's going on in your mind. But now that you know the material, you know the steps, you know the harmonies, so now let's just be and be in the moment. And for all three of us, we actually do play, the white characters. The villains. But for me, how I approached it is that I had to remember that she was a human. She was a person. I don't know why I can give you, options of why she did the things that she did, but at the end of the day, she is still someone that had a choice. And, that's just it.
I am somewhat like David in that it took me a while to doing the show. I actually I had to make myself listen to the soundtrack to get familiar with the songs. And I put myself in a place, I was driving a long distance. So it was where I had to, like, there was no interruption, so I had to listen to it. And the entire time I was driving, I was just like, what am I doing? And what am I gonna do these next, 4 weeks or however long we are doing this, or have been doing this. So it was very difficult. But then, during the rehearsal process, I don't even get a chance to think about that during the rehearsal process. It's just like, but then now, I will say on Friday, I went to work. I work a full-time job. And I went to work, and I was working. I was just doing my job. And then all of a sudden, I just started crying. And I was like, what is going on? And I realized that in my full-time job, there are different things that are hidden me at different spaces. And they can, to me, feel very race-based, very socially based. And so I'm dealing with all of this, and my body doesn't, like my emotion does not understand that when I come on this stage, that I'm playing. And that's a difference between me going to work and having to deal with all the same things at work.
In 2019.
In 2019. The idea that because I look young and because I am a Black female that, we have to explain things to you several times. No, I have a master's degree from a prestigious school. So you don't have to explain this to me, but would you do that to someone else that does not look like me? So to answer the question, that's why it was so difficult for me to say, oh, this is what I'm doing, is because I live it every day.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is it empowering to do the show, to be able to tell the truth, tell the story in a way that, this show is such a dichotomy. It is a song and dance fest, and yet the themes are very heavy and dark. Is there an empowerment?
It was opening night for me because we had been so wrapped up in rehearsals up until that point, and focusing on the dance steps, focusing on our lines, focusing on making sure I'm at my right mark for a spotlight or whatever, where we do the wipe, and I felt David come alive. And David said, I feel it. And when I went to bed that night, I felt, and I always reference my grandmother because she was a sharecropper when she was growing up. I felt like I made her happy. That empowered me more than my own self-gratification, because I would not be here doing what I love if it weren't for the sacrifices of those that came before. Not just those that are in my family, but those who are in our business that came before me. I reference our director a lot. I hold him to such high esteem because he was in this business at a time where Black people weren't as empowered. And I can only imagine everything he had to go through being the only Black male on stage in Anything Goes, tapping in a cast full of white people. I can only imagine the stories he has. So that's what's more empowering to me, that I get to honor my ancestors, that I get to honor all of my grandparents who've gone on, my father's side, who grew up in Wagner, Oklahoma. I had the opportunity to visit there. It's the first time I'd been to real small town, rural Oklahoma, and it terrified me because I felt like I was in a movie. I felt like I was watching The Great Debaters or any movie that had that type of setting.
Wow.
I'm first generation Northerner, I guess, and my family was part of the Great Migration from Mississippi / Oklahoma to Chicago. So all the stories I've heard growing up terrified me of coming to the South. Terrified me. So to be able to tell this story in Raleigh, North Carolina, this story specifically, what is empowering for me is that I get to honor my ancestors.
I find the show is just as its structure empowering, and I think that's what helped me sort of approach the whole process as I was looking at it, less so as all of the shucking and jiving that has to happen, but more so like as a whole, what does this have the ability to say? And I think the fact that there's so much that we encourage the audience to laugh at things that they're traditionally not supposed to before we pull the bottom out, for them to then reflect on where they found the humor in these moments, is what's so empowering. It gives me this almost puppet mastery vibe over the audience, because at the top of the show, I know where the show is going. I know the end result, so I have control over how we're going to get there, and that control, I think, allows me to do this show every night, because I am powerful in this show. All of us are powerful in this show because we know the reaction that we're going to get at the end of the night every night, and that is what I work for from downbeat to downbeat, is that reaction at the end, because that's the importance of this show.
Well, and I think when you see a show like this, it's easy to get riled up. Everybody in this community talk back, they were riled up. And we all say, we're gonna go home and we're gonna do something. It's gonna be good. We're gonna change our lives. And then we walk out that door into the parking lot and get on with our lives. And I fear that a lot of us forget. So, as dramaturg, as historian, and for all of you, what are the action steps that you hope audiences walking out of this theater are going to, because it's going to take a little while for people to process what they've seen, so we need to, I feel like people need to have that time, but what action steps would you like them to take so that they do something with the information they've been given?
I think it's a mental checklist and just a mental awareness. How you said that it's going to be a process, they have to process it, and so in order to make change, change doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. So I think just watching this show from the start, having that mental awareness of how you view the world and other people and just perception. I think for me, that's what I would want. For when audience members walk out, they just look at things a different way.
I would agree. I was going to say almost the exact same thing. And it's a process that does not stop.
Yes. For us.
So we don't get the benefit of ever not mentally thinking about what our perception or what someone else's perception of our race might be. We don't ever get that chance. Now, some people do it to the point of exhaustion. Some people, like, it doesn't exist. But overall, we know that someone's going to look at us specifically based on the race that we come to this earth in. I would hope that someone watches this, interrogates themselves continuously. The first action item is not what you do outward, it's inward. In your heart, do you still see me as less than? If you can see the humanity of the Scottsboro boys, do you see the humanity of the person who looks like the Scottsboro boys on the news, or do you go with the soundbite of what they did? And so you don't have to march with us. Can you internally do that? And then at your dinner tables, before you march, before you cry, when you see someone, when you see a black woman who says, no, I'm not going to do that? Is she the angry black woman, or is she a black woman is she a human being that wants to rise in her power and say, this, I don't have to do this anymore? That is, I'm hoping for empathy. I'm hoping that people understand it, but I'm hoping inwardly they challenge their cultural conditioning. They challenge their morality. They challenge what they think of people of color. They challenge their white privilege. They challenge the stories that they've been told and that they believe and that they ascribe to.
And no matter where they are in that process, they challenge it.
Yes.
Because I think that's another thing that's sort of hard is there are people who are like, well, I do all of these things, so I am exempt. And I think that's what's so important about this show is theater always attracts a mixed crowd, but it's a mostly liberal crowd. But I think it's important for no matter where you are in the process to sit back and say, wait a second, my gut reaction before this takes in. What does my gut, what does my heart tell me about these moments and instances, and how can I change that direction so that it's pointing to a place of equality, humanity, and just compassion?
Anything that has surprised you? You're now finishing your opening weekend. Anything that surprised you about the audience response?
I guess personally, I think it's a lot, at least vocally, positive than I was expecting, especially from the talkback today and the talkback that we did yesterday. I was expecting not necessarily people to be opposed to it, but to more silently have shut down and be less open to talking about these issues. Because there's so many talkbacks that I've done where all of the questions are like, how long did you rehearse? Are you from New York? How long have you been dancing? And that's not the point of a talkback, especially with a show like this. So I'm glad that the audiences are able to really sort of, on some level, digest what has happened in a rapid enough form to initiate a conversation off the jump, to try and not change anything or fix anything, but for us as a community to provide more information on a topic that is so difficult to talk about in a mixed crowd because there's so many other outward factors that have a play on the conversation.
I will say there is one particular reaction that I think we internally as a cast discuss, but I haven't heard it outwardly, and not to give away the show at all for those that haven't seen it, but you have so many stereotypes on this stage, and for some people there's one stereotype that sticks out to them as outrageous, and it's a cultural stereotype. So you have, obviously your black stereotype, and then there is this one non-black stereotype. Did I?
He said it.
Oh, you said it already?
I said it right off the top.
So, and when someone is more outraged because of that and does not see and sees the black stereotype as normal, that shocks me. And actually there was a audience member in the talkback that we had that said something about that today. She touched on it, and I was just,
I looked at you.
because I was like, wow, yes, we are all human beings, so that one thing is not any different than
But that
the
audience
black.
member, and I know we went live, because that is who she was, she identified with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was screaming in my head, did you miss everything else? Like, yeah.
But at the same time, my thought process is I'm gonna fight for everybody. But when it comes to me, I need you there. I need you on the front line too. Because I'm pouring out my heart for you. And to make my life, my son's life, his children's life, a better environment for everyone. So if I come out for you, I need you to feel the same way about me.
Well, thank you guys so much for sitting down with me. I know it's been a long 4-show weekend. But people have to see the show.
Yeah.